Here. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, and 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome back once again to the Great Scott Podcast. Today, I am joined by legendary actress Miss Loni Anderson. How's it going, Loni?
It's going great. It's nice to be back.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I got really excited when you said yes to doing this. I've been a huge fan of yours for so long. My parents and I watch WKRP a lot. They
That
made
is
me grow up on
wonderful.
that.
That's wonderful. You know what? I like my age group. I always go by the age group. The kids that were little are about 40 years old, even younger, that watched with their parents when it was first on. And then, of course, there were reruns ever after.
Absolutely. And I've been also reading your book, My Life in High Heels.
My Life in High Heels.
And it's such a great read too. I mean,
Thank you.
So you've had your fair share of ups and downs, as you mentioned in your book there. And one thing I want to start out with is I want to first send off my condolences to you about Burt, about his passing. I know that was about 2 or 3 years ago, but
and we're having a ceremony coming up, unveiling a sculpture, a beautiful monument at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where Burt is located. And Quentin and I picked out the spot under a palm tree by the water, surrounded by all the icons he loves. Yes. And this lovely monument will be dedicated next week. So we're it's been quite a journey for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So now everybody can go and talk to him if they want to. There he is.
Absolutely. Now, I want to start off with something in your book that you mentioned about your dad's passing when you went to his funeral. Yes. There was a note that was slipped to you, or that was given to you rather, by one of your dad's friends. And tell us about that note, because it said something pretty important in there about you.
From I believe it was Don Stecker, who was his partner and best friend, and really letting me know that my dad always thought that I was going to be a success, and that he had great faith in what was going to be in store for me, and he knew I would be able to handle it, and he was sorry that he wouldn't be there to manage my money. He was so cute.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how your dad was. I mean, speaking of money, he gave you and your sister money just to see what you guys would do with it.
Yes. And I love that, is that he said, I could leave this to you in my will, but I'd like to be here to see what you're going to do with it. And both of us bought a house. We both put a down payment on our houses, and he got to experience that with us instead of something that happened after his death.
And you also use some of that money toward furthering your career as well.
Yes. And a career that I didn't realize he was so positive about. Because he died before WKRP. He died before I went blonde. And so I always wish he'd come back for just a day and go, oh my goodness, who is this blonde woman? And oh my gosh, the life you've had. What a surprise. But hopefully he's watching down and seeing it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure that he's smiling where he's at and seeing his daughter be as successful as
my mom got to see it, even though she died very young, but she got to see the whole beginning.
Did she like the going from brunette to blonde?
Oh, she was all for it. It was my grandma on my dad's side who didn't approve, because they were the black-haired side of the family. And so my dad's mom, I would call her and say, Grandma, would you like me to send you my latest, publicity shot or something? And she'd say, are you still blonde? And I would say, yes, I am. And she said, then no, don't send it.
But that was kind of like your career pretty much. I mean, when you went from brunette to blonde, that's when the roles started to come in for you.
Yeah. I mean, I always worked as a brunette, but the lighter my hair got, the more work I got.
Kind of like a Lucille Ball thing.
Yeah, right, with the redhead. Yeah, with the red. Identify. Yeah. I tried red, like along the line when I was doing all the different colors to see how I would look, because my mom was a redhead, so I thought maybe it would work for me, but it was the blonde thing.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I want to talk to you about your ex-husband, Burt Reynolds, a football star in Florida.
Yeah, in high school and in college, and injuries.
Yes.
Derailed that. So one of his professors, who was always very close to him, said, try the theater department. And he thought, well, what do I have to lose? What can I do to get me out of this funk? And found out that he had a great affinity for it.
And there was a time where you were playing hard to get with Burt, because he kept trying
Yes,
to get you,
yes,
but
yes, yes.
you kept
He did, well,
resisting.
he was pretty much a tabloid headline. And
Yes.
I had decided for myself that I was hoping that I could avoid that. But he was so persistent. And so I finally, after about a year of him asking, said yes. And that was it. We were together from then on for about 12 years.
12 years, but you guys were married for 5 of
For
those years,
6,
right?
yeah, like 5.5, 6 years.
5.5, 6
Like
years.
half and half. I always said that we never really needed to get married. The relationship was just fine the way it was, but adopting a child, we really needed to be married. So to have Quentin, we had to be a married couple. And so we decided, well, let's do that. I mean, we're a couple anyway, and we want to have a child. And so that was, and he built the chapel. And it was also exciting because I always say to Quentin, it's all because of you and this great gift that we've had of you all of our lives.
So how is Quentin doing?
Oh, Quentin is great. He's a first responder. He's an EMT, and he's part of the Sheriff's Search and Rescue Department. And so he is my daredevil, but he's also such a good heart. I mean, he really wants to save lives. I mean, he's the one that when you call, he's the one that's going to be there for you. And he started out after college being a cameraman, and he was in the union. And I thought, oh, finally, my daughter's not in show business. I thought, I have somebody in show business. But he did come to me and say, Mom, I have to go back to school, back to my first love. And so he's a very fulfilled guy.
So the acting bug or the acting didn't seem to really interest him.
But he loves movies, and he understands camera work, and he's quite good at picking up on art. He was always a wonderful artist. So the art part is there, but the saving lives is number one. And so I'm very, very proud of him. And my daughter didn't want anything to do with show business. She's a school superintendent and married to a school superintendent who's right now the head of superintendents in California. So they have their own identities and their own big careers, because I think there's something about having a celebrity parent,
Yes.
or a celebrity family member where you feel like, well, yeah, but I'm not just. My mom used to say, I don't tell anybody I'm your mom anymore, because I don't want to just be Loni Anderson's mother. I'm still Maxine. I still have an identity. So I don't really want it to be connected with you. And at first I thought, oh, golly, and my sister said the same thing. Oh yeah, my husband and I, when we moved to a new town, because he was a forest ranger, so they were transferred a lot. And she said, oh, we never tell anybody that you're my sister until we're pretty sure that they like us just for us. And my daughter would say to me, now don't come to school. And if you come, you have to come in the back entrance, and don't let anybody see you. And it was,
Yeah.
Quentin less like that. But because then he had 2 celebrity parents. Sometimes he would say to us, have you guys caused enough of a commotion? And he would just be, they get kind of exasperated with you. And but now my granddaughters, on the other hand, think it's the coolest thing ever.
It seems to skip a generation.
It did.
Yes.
Of course, I don't directly affect them. Now I'm just like this cool retro kind of grandma. Yeah.
Do they watch you with your movies and WKRP and all that?
Yes, and I just got a wonderful text and their story on Instagram and stuff, and they're watching some old movie that I did, and it's like Grandma Night and Grandma Stories and stuff like that. It's really cute. I'm very flattered.
But when Burt came to you, he, like you say, he was really persistent with you. Like he really
Yes, he
wanted
was.
you. But it was like he would go back and forth between you and Dinah Shore and Sally Field, or he would go from person to person.
Actually not during that time.
No.
No, actually not during that time. It depends on what his recollections were not always
Yeah,
the best and most reliable. He did have a substance abuse problem, and so no, there was no back and forth. There was just me.
gotcha. Yeah, he did have he was addicted to painkillers,
Yes.
as you mentioned in the book, and there was a time that you had mentioned in the book that he had slept for 36 hours straight
Yes. Yeah, we
after
did have some
having
experiences,
brains.
the ups and the downs, and I always choose, especially later in life. I mean, the last time we had dinner, and he brought me flowers, and we had dinner with Quentin, and all the things that people really don't realize, I think, about how we were after we got divorced. There would be times that he would say something, and I'd say, Bert, what brought that on? I don't know, he would say. So it was our relationship, not in front of the camera or not in a book or anything else, was just that we were Quentin's parents, and that we had a history together, and we had a lot of good times. And you don't stay with somebody for 12 years because there are no good times. So that's really what it was about. And we had a lovely dinner with Quentin, not too many, just a couple of years before his death. But the end of his life, he was uh, more infirm. It was Quentin really wanted to take care of him, and we were in the process of actually moving him here from Florida to the motion picture home right before his death.
And going back to Quentin for just one moment, you had mentioned that in the book also that his godparents were the Montalbans,
Oh my gosh.
Ricardo and Georgie
Ricardo Montalban and
Yeah.
Georgiana Montalban, who was Loretta Young's sister. The most wonderful friends. Bert was 10 years my senior, and Dinah had been 20 years his senior. So she brought a lot of her just super incredible, legendary generation into his life. And then he brought them into mine. So they were like my parents' age and older. But Georgie and Ricardo were our very best friends, and just the perfect godparents. And Ricardo always said to Quentin, your father is a complicated man, but we love him in spite of himself.
Yes, and he was on his way to pick up the Montalbans where you guys were at when he was sleeping for the 36 hours.
Oh, yes, about that story. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
One of the people need to buy my book to hear those stories. I have lots of stories.
Yes, absolutely, and it's a great book. I want to just
thank
up
you.
there,
Thank you
My
very
Life
much.
in High Heels, and
I think everybody should write a book, because if your kids sometimes are not so interested in your stories when they're younger, and then when they get older, and maybe really older, and you're gone, they think, I wish I would have asked mom that, or I wish I would have asked dad that.
absolutely.
And so I recommend writing a book to everybody, because leave it to your kids and your grandkids, and so they can look up those answers to the questions that they have.
Absolutely. And there's a project I want to talk to you about that Burt did and that you were part of as well, called Win, Lose, or Draw.
Oh, right. Oh,
That's
what
the
a fun game
show.
show that was. Oh, that was so much fun.
Yeah.
Because we played it at home. That's where the idea came from. We would have the blackboard in the house and have people over, and really legendary people like Fred Astaire, and he would draw these perfect tiny little figures. They were just so perfect. And so it was so much fun. Bert said to Bert Convy, who was always there too, let's turn this into a game show. And it was just so much fun to do. We had so many great people on there, and but I have to brag about myself a little bit, because I think I hold the record for the most, in the lightning round.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yes. And he would just, he kind of would brag about me and have me on all the time.
Now there was about four or five different hosts of that show. You had Burt Convy, Vicki Lawrence, Rob Weller, and I think Mark Price did the kids version of it as well.
It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish it was still around.
I know it was. Well, there are versions, I would imagine, like Pictionary
Oh,
and
yes, that too.
things that
Yeah,
are the kind of similar to it.
absolutely.
Charades
Now,
with a drawing.
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yes.
Uh, so you were part of that show, and then they had a revival that they wanted you to be a part of, but you had declined.
Yes, I did, and because I really wanted our creator, producer, genius, Hugh Wilson, was not involved with the second WKRP. And he was the genius behind WKRP and really the writer and the everything that made it all tick. And so I just didn't have the belief in it without him.
And what a cast it was. I mean, you had Howard Hessman, you
Howard
had
Hesseman, yeah.
Gary Sandy,
Mhm.
who you dated.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
And Frank Bonner, who we just lost recently.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And oh my gosh, we had some of the best scenes together. And Jan Smithers, who's we're all in, Frank Bonner, we're all in touch. We lost Gordon years ago, but we all still are on the phone and emailing and texting one another because we were a family and we remain a family.
And that's one thing I've heard. I mean, some castmates don't get along, but I'm glad to hear that. And that's gonna be my next question. If you guys still keep in touch with one another.
Oh yes, all the time. And very close. I mean, it's a very close thing that happens. It was, none of us was a star at the time. And so we all grew together with this show. And I remember all holding hands backstage when we went out for the pilot, and Tim Reed said, let's all remember this moment because it's never going to be the same again. We just had a feeling about the show that it was going to take off. And it's kind of like your first kiss. Okay, you're going to kiss again, but it's just never going to be quite the same as this moment. And he was right. We talk about that often.
And so you didn't want the part of Janet Marlowe at
Jennifer, no,
first.
I didn't want Jennifer Marlowe at first. I thought she was gonna like put me in the dumb blonde category. I thought she was window dressing and that she didn't have anything to do except say, here are your messages. And so I kept turning down auditioning for it. And my agent was the one who said, you need to go in there because this is MTM. They might cast you in something else. And so, of course, I went in. And but what was really interesting about my turning it down, because Grant Tinker and Hugh Wilson were in the office, and I said, I don't want to play this character. I hope I get to work for you some other time, but I think she's just window dressing, and I'm kind of on my way to blonde because I wasn't quite blonde. And I said, and I just I'm looking for something else, and I'm looking to make a statement. I'm looking to make a statement about women who are attractive in the workplace and still can be the smartest person. And so they said, okay, we'll read it like that. And but I wasn't prepared, of course, because I was on my little soapbox. And so I did it, and I went home, and they called me and said, you got the part. And it was amazing because then it was a shared journey for Hugh Wilson and I. He said, I want you to look like Lana Turner and be the smartest person in the room. And so that was really quite something for 1978. You tell young girls that now, they're like, of course, we can be pretty and smart and the best at everything. But in 78, in comedy, that usually wasn't the case. Glamour and being the smartest person in the room kind of didn't go with comedy. So
Absolutely. Times, it shows you times have changed ever since then. Yes.
Yes, they have.
Now you and Gary Offset could not keep your hands off of each other as well.
Well, I always say too hot not to cool down. But we are his best friends. I was just talking to him recently, and during the pandemic, he has been so wonderful. He's been with his mother, who's 101 years old.
Oh, wow.
And yes, I know, she's so incredible, Dolores. And so yeah, we talk all the time because sometimes you start as friends and castmates and everything else, and you think maybe that's the person you should date because it's so safe. And so we're better friends now than the romance was short-lived and wonderful. And he's still, I love him. He's one of my dearest friends, and we can talk about anything.
And there was one more guy that you had a connection with, Hasselberg.
Oh, yes, my
Yes,
daughter, my
yes.
daughter's father. Yeah, no,
Your
I
daughter's
haven't.
father.
No, that was what, 56 years ago. So I have no connection to him at all.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you also mentioned in the book that you have no regrets at all, that you would or you have very little regrets. You would marry Burt all over again.
Oh yeah, because if I like where my life is, I like who I am, I like the people in it, I like what's happened, and if you skipped even one part, then maybe you wouldn't end up in the same place. So I feel like all your experiences go into this Loni soup, and if you like the flavor when it's all cooked, then that means that you couldn't skip one thing, one ingredient. So everyone played an important part, and then you can't regret it, because without that, you wouldn't have this. And it's like, it's a wonderful life. It's, you go
Absolutely.
back and say, oh my gosh, everything would have been so different without the mix.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And Lonnie, someone wanted me to ask you, what are you up to these days now?
Oh my gosh. Well, I have a little series that's on, you can see it on Amazon, called My Sister Is So Gay, where I play the perpetually tipsy and promiscuous mother of two gay children, but she adores her children beyond belief and supports them. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful little series. And it's written by Terry Ray, and a great friend of Charles Nelson Riley, who was also a friend of mine. So when he handed me the script, it was like, oh yeah,
The match game.
yeah. And but I'm always out there doing interesting things. Coming up, I'm judging at the Asian Film Festival, and so it's wonderful, and presenting, and I'm quite excited about that. And so there's always something coming up. And our business has been, I'm in the crowd business. There have been no crowds.
Yeah.
So really there has been very little show business. And so
Absolutely.
now we're kind of glad to get back out there.
And Lonnie, I have one more question for you, ma'am. What advice do you give to someone who wants to get into the entertainment industry?
What I always say is there's no magic way, or I would be so popular if I could tell everybody how to. Thing is, if you really want it and you just don't, I don't like the I want to be famous to be famous thing. I don't, you have to, for me, if you want to go somewhere, have some history, have some talent, and some experience, and then hope that somehow, and persevere. But
Yes.
one thing about show business, it's very fickle.
Yes.
And you have to, if you really want it, you have to stick with it. And you have to look, I always say, look up in the dictionary, look on your phone now, Google, that just rejection, and
You'll
get
see
really
Hollywood there.
with rejection, because that's what's going to happen most of the time. And you
Yeah.
have to be able to come through that and persevere.
And I know you've mentioned your fair share of projects in the book as well that have that were supposed to be. I know you mentioned Leonard Stern. You were with a project with him, but then he backed out, and that was with Johnny Carson's production company.
Yes, it was. And he just didn't, he had created it, Partners in Crime, with Linda Carter and I, and he didn't like the way it was going. So yeah, after the pilot, Leonard left, but Johnny was there, and he was great. And Johnny and I were friends for forever.
Yeah, I was going to say Johnny was pretty generous from the book, that because you were having your fair share of troubles during that time as well.
Yes, I was. And my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and she was at UCLA, and we were in San Francisco shooting, and shooting those 22-hour days that are not always wonderful. And I needed to get back every weekend to take care of my mom and make sure everything was going right for her. And the last flight out of San Francisco was at 10:30, and we'd shoot until like 2 a.m. And then I couldn't get on a plane until Saturday, and then I'd have to come right back on Sunday. And so I was exhausted. Yeah. And Johnny, excuse me, actually sent his private jet to the airport in San Francisco. So whenever I finished on Friday night, I would get flown back to LA to be there for my mom for the weekend.
Yeah, I was gonna say you had a rigorous schedule. I mean,
Yeah,
and
it was
Burt was
wonderful.
and Burt wasn't doing well himself either.
No,
at
he
that
wasn't
time.
doing well either. It was a trying time.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, Lonnie, I appreciate your time, ma'am. Thank you
Thank
so much for
you.
coming on. And hey,
Thank you very much.
I'm definitely gonna get this book out to you to have signed. All right.
Okay, that's, oh, I like that. You know, I wrote it in 1995, so there have been so many years since then. I guess I need to write a sequel.
I was gonna say, yeah, I was gonna say this is a few years old. If you're
It is,
gonna-
and Oprah had said to me, maybe I should write my life in flats, you know, since I wrote my life in high heels.
Yes.
But I continue to wear my high heels, so I'm not sure what I'll call it. Still in high heels? I don't know.
You're working on the concept for it now. Well, it sounds like
Yes.
I guess sounds like that you are. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, Lonnie, thank you so much, ma'am, for your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, ma'am. You're most kind.